We're ready. Stay.
Great. Thanks, Diane. I really appreciate you getting us up and going so quickly, and for everyone joining us. I'm going to call today's Public Safety and Health Committee meeting to order. It's April 13th. We are still meeting virtually. We are going to quickly do a roll call, and then we're going to get right into our committee meeting interviews. We don't want to shortchange any of our interviewees. We are so Diana, if you wouldn't mind doing a quick roll call, I'd appreciate it.
Stacy Anderson.
Present.
Merta Becerra.
Present.
Daniel Carlino.
Present.
John Contos. John Contos. Jordan Hess.
He is absent.
Gwen Jones.
Also absent.
Kristen Jordan.
Absent as well.
Mike Nugent.
I'm present.
Jennifer Savage.
Also present.
Amber Sherrill.
Present.
Sandra Pasica.
Present.
Heidi West. Heidi West. Thank you.
Okay, she's on her way over. Thank you guys for hopping right on over. We'll do approval of minutes at the end, and there is no public comment. So hopefully we are here today to do interviews for the appointment for the Food Policy Advisory Board, and we have 3 interviews. Our first interviewee is here. It's Grant Melton, and he has been allowed into the room. So hopefully he can unmute himself.
Hello.
Oh gosh. Hello?
Hi, can you hear me?
Oh, we can. Lovely.
Nice.
Greetings. Well, thanks so much for your application. And like I said, today we're doing 3 interviews. We have 1 spot open. Normally, if we were having committee meetings in person, we would go around the dais and everyone would ask a question. But since that's a little hard to do via Zoom, you're unfortunately going to hear all the questions from me today. So we have 8 questions in about 15 minutes, and we'll get going right away. Are you able to turn on your video? So we usually ask applicants if they're able to do that, unless they're calling in via a phone.
I can. I don't know why it's not giving me the option to do that.
I don't know if Diana needs to upgrade you to is it saying that the host is not allowing you to turn on your video?
I may need to be upgraded to a panelist because I don't know if I am right now.
That's an excellent point. You probably aren't. I just have the ability to add you to promote to panelist. There we go.
Oh, nice. There we go.
Lovely. I
think we're golden here.
There you are. Hello. Lovely to
Hi,
see
thanks.
you. So I'm Stacy Anderson. I'm the chair, and I'll just quickly be asking these questions of you today. So first off, I actually reordered these from what they originally were ordered because they didn't make a lot of sense. So we're going to start off with the obvious first opening question. Do you have any prior board leadership experience? Board or leadership experience?
Yeah, thank you for the question. And I'd also just like to mention too, I'm happy to keep this conversational and as fluid as possible. So if anyone has any questions while I'm speaking, feel free to ask. But to answer your question, Stacy, I don't have any prior board leadership experience, but I would love to take this as an opportunity to tell you a little bit why I'm interested in joining the Food Policy Advisory Board specifically. I moved to Missoula about 3 years ago. And one of the things I've always admired about the community here is how proud and progressive it is, and how involved everyone is in this community. And as a community member myself now, I take full advantage of that. But I also feel like since I do take advantage of all the wonderful things that Missoula has to offer, I feel a responsibility to be involved on the municipal level, which is why I'm interested in this position. I've also worked in food media and political organizing for quite some time. So when I saw this position on the Food Policy Advisory Board, I thought it was a great combination of my experience.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, dovetails into the second question of what skills, connections, resources, or expertise would you bring to the board?
Sure. So like I said, I worked in food media for over 10 years. So professionally speaking, using food is something that I've always used to connect to people and a way to tell stories. So whether that is producing a recipe video for a client that's going to live on YouTube or developing a web series that celebrates a specific food culture, I've always been interested in ways to bring more people to the dinner table. In addition to working in food media, like I said, I've also worked in political organizing. My first sort of foray into that was working for Elizabeth Warren's campaign for president as a full-time volunteer organizer. And then later in the same campaign season, working for the Biden-Harris campaign based out of the state of Iowa. So when I saw this position, I immediately thought it was great for myself. And I'm hoping that my unique combination of working as a food professional and also as a political organizer will bring a really unique perspective to the Food Policy and Advisory Board.
Great, thanks for that. As a fellow foodie, I appreciate all of those YouTube videos that I watch. Tell us about an instance where you have participated in an organization or programmatic strategy development, planning, or visioning.
Sure. Yeah, I guess the first thing that comes to mind for me is working as an organizer for the Biden-Harris campaign in Iowa. I work primarily on the phone banking program, which was powered by a network of volunteers. And some volunteers volunteered hours of their time and others volunteered an entire weekend. But one of the things I learned as an organizer wasn't always about the amount of time that a volunteer was able to bring to the table, but it was also about the ideas that they had and the things that they wanted to see happen. I think one of the first things you learn as a political organizer, one of those key things that you're taught is to always meet people where they're at. And I think that's an important place to start when we're having conversations about healthy, sustainable, and equitable food, especially here in Missoula.
I agree. Thank you so much. Being a leader on a community board sometimes entails controversy. Please tell us about your approach to conflict management and having a civil discussion.
Sure. Yeah, I firmly believe that there is more that unites us than divides us. I think, unfortunately, in the current political climate, we focus on the latter a little too much, but I don't think a lot of things have changed. I do think there is a lot of common ground, and I think the best way to make institutional and long-lasting change is to find places where we can all agree. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but it is where we can make change that lasts and that is impactful. One of the things that, or one of our motto on the digital organizing team for the Biden-Harris campaign in Iowa was to always bring joy to the fight. And that's a motto that I've carried with me in my personal and professional life since on. And it's something that I would carry with me to this position. I think that we can have hard conversations as long as they're coming from a really good place. And that the reason I think I'm excited about this position specifically is because food is the one thing that can really unite us. It's kind of hard to be divisive when we're talking about food. And like I said before, the more that we can bring, or the more people we can bring to the dinner table and have open and honest conversations, the better off we all are.
Great, thanks so much. I don't know, food can be divisive in my household about fighting for what's for dinner. But do you have any innovative ideas for the board, such as increasing public involvement or kind of anything that you would want to see this board kind of undertake?
Yeah, I think there's two specific things here. The first one I think that I'd like to, or the first one I will touch on is to focus on creating a clear message about the equitable and affordable foods that already exist here in Missoula. I think through strategic partnerships and community outreach, we can make local food more accessible, especially to those who need it the most. If we're able to build, and when we do build a thriving food system, we not only keep more dollars in our local communities, but we can build a more equitable food system that works for everybody and not just those who can afford it. But I also think that we need to take it one step further. I think that teaching people about the equitable foods that are available here in Missoula is a great place to start, but we also have to teach people how to use them and how to cook with them. What's the point of all of these really great things that you have access to if you don't know how to use them? And I think that can be done in a variety of ways. I think that one of the first things that comes to mind, and maybe this is because I visited the new library recently and saw the beautiful kitchen there that is there for the community to learn how to cook. And I think taking advantage of that would be a great place to start. I also see food as a way to solve problems in the city. As we all know that there is a growing homeless population in this city. Is there a way that we can have a cooking club where we teach people how to cook, but then use that food to help and give it to people who need it the most? I think finding some really creative ways to not only teach people how to cook, but also give back to the community would be a really, really great idea. Secondly, I think I would love to have conversations on the board about long-term goals when it comes to farming and land use, and seeing that as a place for innovation. I think that we can grow food in a sustainable and accessible way that is both profitable for farmers and really good for our planet. But it would take a lot of innovation in order for that to happen. And I think that those conversations need to start now so that can happen in the future. So that might mean encouraging urban farming or hydroponic farming, and just looking at ways that we can use technology to sort of like innovate our farming process in Missoula.
Great, thanks for those ideas. The next question is, the committee meets from 3:30 to 5 on the third Monday of every month. Attendance is required. Is that a time and commitment that you're able to make if chosen for this board spot?
Yes, absolutely. I'm not always excited about Mondays, but yes, I can do that.
We'll give you something to get excited about on the third Monday of the month.
Right.
Okay. Lucy agrees. Sorry. Okay. Are you willing to watch an online training for board members that's about 2 hours long and read the associated training materials?
Yes.
Great. Thanks so much. Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I mean, since we do have like a couple minutes together, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, and I'll just put this question out to everyone on the call. But I would love to hear an example that you think is working really well on the Food Policy Advisory Board, or maybe something that you would like to see more of.
Great question. I am going to ask Miss West, who is on, I do believe has joined us. There she is.
I am here.
Yes, and she is the council liaison to this board and kind of one of the kind of minds behind this. I would love for her to take this question.
So as you are probably aware of, this is a really new board. I think it's the first city county board that's been created in a very long time. And so in the past year, we've worked through our bylaws and establishing some strategic vision documents. And so I think we're really early on in still figuring out how we work. But I think one of the things that we're starting to be able to act on is to really engage in the public processes that are happening. So for example, the county is going through a rezone and is asking for comments at the moment, which of course impacts soil and local agriculture and how we use land in the future, and the board's working on drafting a comment on that. So those are some things that are working well, I think. I think there's always the challenge of figuring out how to communicate with the public and how to engage people. And I think we're still really early on in trying to figure out how to do that. And I think that is something that we still need to figure out how to do and do better. So those are maybe really general answers, but I hope that helps with some context.
Thanks, Ms. West, for that. Yes, I don't know if Mr. Milton, if that sort of helped kind of give you some context.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I can really relate to the messaging and community outreach portion of that, because like I was saying, I know, Missoula does have a very equitable and sustainable food system here. And I think making people more aware of that is a great place to start. And the more we can be a part of the community, the more that we can get people involved and the better off we all are. So thank you for that.
Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time to join us and your thoughts and being willing to give some of your time to serve Missoula. Like I said, we have 2 other interviews. We will be making a decision today. There's 1 board spot, and the clerk's office will be back in touch with you to let you know if you were selected. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. I look forward to hearing from you.
All right, take care. Okay. Miraculously, we are on schedule. So we have 5 minutes before the next interview, which is Rebecca Elderkin, I believe. And so we did not approve the minutes earlier on the agenda. So I'd love to take care of that piece of business right now. So we have minutes to approve from our April 6th Public Safety and Health meeting. Is there any amendments or additions to those minutes? Okay, seeing none, those will stand approved. I did not call for public comment, but there was no public, and there still is no public with us today. Okay, folks, we have 4 minutes before the next interview. I know I could use a little piece of chocolate. So how about we take a quick recess and come back at 3:30 or 2:30, sorry, and then we'll do the next interview with Rebecca Elderkin. Thanks so much. See you momentarily. Okay, folks, it is 2:30. And Diana, did you
Our panelist is ready.
oh, fabulous. Got took the words right out of my mouth. Okay, folks, so we are now moving on to our next interview. Rebecca, are you able to hear us?
I can, thank goodness. Can you hear me?
We can. Hello. Thank you for joining us.
I appreciate your time.
Yes.
Likewise.
Well, I'm Stacy Anderson. I'm the chair of the Public Safety and Health Committee. And normally, if we were doing these interviews in person, we would go around the dais and each individually ask questions. We found that that's a little clunky during Zoom meetings. So unfortunately, you're just going to have to hear all the questions from me. So and there'll be an opportunity for you to ask us any questions and go from there. So I reordered the questions from the original sheet that was sent out. So hopefully they make up for a better flow of conversation. So I'm going to start with the first question is kind of an introductory question. Also, kind of what prior board, I want to say board and or leadership experience do you have? Because it just says board experience, board leadership, but I think both are applicable. If you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about yourself and answering that question.
Sure. Thank you. I'm reaching you from Bozeman, from MSU. It's actually my first time visiting the university here, but I graduated from the University of Montana in the School of Public Health. There I studied public health with a concentration in community health and prevention sciences. I went from there to the health department where I worked on the COVID-19 incident until I started working at All Nations Health Center. So the board experience that I have has largely been a function of my role at All Nations, which has been to be participating in the charter, the Climate Equity Intermediary Group, to try and incorporate this equity piece into our climate ready plan. And besides at the county level, I am also a board member of the Montana Health Professionals for a Healthy Climate.
Great, thanks so much. So kind of dovetailing off of that, what skills, connections, resources, and expertise do you feel that you would bring to this board position?
Absolutely. I'm currently at MSU at the Upper Missouri River Basin Drought and Human Health Workshop, and we're talking about climate preparedness. And I mentioned being at the health department as part of the COVID-19 incident. And that was very much my transition into working at All Nations was COVID-19 preparedness. And since then, I have been transitioning steadily into climate preparedness. So I think from my work experience perspective, these two are very comparable, right? How do we prepare our community for emergencies? So I absolutely bring to the table all of that work experience related to emergency preparedness and public health. And then additionally, I'd like to emphasize that concentration in community health and prevention sciences. I am a certified health education specialist, and we bring to the table all sorts of skills that are absolutely complemented by public health and complement public health in turn. But it's a much more focused, lasered perspective on specific communities, and it comes with a set of tools and instruments related to research, such as needs assessments, and then additionally health education and health communications. And I think that this piece related to food and agriculture, this marriage between those objectives, which is the genesis of our policy board, would absolutely benefit from a health education specialist perspective and skills.
Great. I appreciate that answer, and really thank you for taking the time in amongst what sounds like a very busy day to pop on and do this interview. That's great. So tell us about an instance where you have participated in organization or programmatic strategy development planning and visioning. This is a fairly new board, and so a lot of the board participation is around kind of developing how this board will interact in the community. So if you have any experience about that, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great question to discuss some of the consulting work that I do as a health education specialist. My colleague and I from the University of Montana, Bonnie Bishop, she and I are consulting for Yellowstone National Park. And this project, this year-long contract, is to do a needs assessment for all of the employees who work at Yellowstone. So as far as strategic visioning, program planning, creating a plan for a health education specialist, it begins with an evaluation of what needs to be done. And at Yellowstone, which is a really fascinating little microcosmos of all sorts of inter-agency dynamics, for example. So we're doing an assessment of the entire park, all of its employees, which involve for-profit entities, the National Park Service, a government entity. We have service stations, we have medical professionals, we have a nonprofit, Yellowstone Forever, and all of these agencies have very different interests and concerns and priorities. So my colleague and I have begun this process with building a strategic advisory committee and the process of maintaining the project, which is also, extensively research. We need this advisory board to, we need to build sticky relationships on the advisory board, right? So even though all of these agencies are managing the well-being of the park in all sorts of ways, they don't have a lot of experience working with one another. So we're building relationships on the board, we're doing ongoing education, we're keeping them apprised of our process. We're trying to cultivate a culture of optimism. These are the issues that we're finding out in our research, but these are the things that we can do. These are the things we can already start to do. These are the things that we need your help so we can help you do these things. So who needs to be involved? So I think that, those right people being involved and really cultivating that energy and optimism has been a big part of that process. So the assessment is about halfway through, and our findings will inform recommendations in this, scientific, evidence-based approach. So that's very much an answer related to my particular wheelhouse, which is a health education specialist, but that's where it begins, is this needs assessment and getting the right people in the room.
Great, thanks for that. Being a leader on a community board sometimes entails controversy. So please tell us about your approach to conflict management and having and promoting a civil discussion.
Yeah, it's such an important question. And, some of the work and interests that I have that have steered me to where I am have absolutely been inspired by food and agriculture. And what's going on in Missoula County specifically. And I can understand where, conflict is hottest. One of my favorite master facilitators, Priya Parker, she's an author of The Art of Gathering. She calls this heat, an indicator of what's most important to us. I was at the University of Montana and I did the Natural Resource Conflict Resolution program. So I do have a favorite facilitator, but I did gain those skills in facilitation and negotiations. And I had a year-long working stint with the Center for Dispute Resolution, a nonprofit in Missoula that does arbitration services for people who need sliding scale rates. And I gained those facilitation skills as well. But I think that from a more personal standpoint, it takes patience and listening. And interestingly enough, the talk I just left was about food and food sovereignty, and it was a Native person's perspective, and she said, how can we be like the bison? How can we steer towards the thing that is giving us the most trouble, but with this knowledge that it's probably the most important thing we need to face.
Great, thanks for that. And I know you kind of touched on this on the question before last, but what other or any innovative ideas for the board do you have, such as around increasing public involvement or just general innovative ideas you'd like to bring to the board?
Yeah, thank you for asking that question. I know that the final question is, do I have any questions? And in my mind, the proper order is that I better understand the genius that's already happening on the Food Policy Board, so I don't come in just talking right away. But I do think about food and food systems quite a bit. It is something that absolutely steered me in going to school at the University for Public Health. A lot of the writing and publishing I've done in the past has been about food, and it's absolutely been inspired by what I've been experiencing and seeing here in Missoula. One of the most recent articles I published for the Sustainable Food Trust was about UHI, so the urban heat island effect. How can farmers be involved with this conversation about reducing or mitigating urban heat? And it's this whole, it's certainly a marriage of climate priorities and human health, but I wrote this article with a real belief that farmers need to be involved in this conversation. I also wrote an article about just equity and food conversations. This article was really inspired by a project that I was talking to Bonnie Cunningham about a couple of years ago. It was a project that we wanted to do in 2020 before the pandemic happened. And the problem that she and I were talking about was this issue of local agriculture having a reputation for being elitist. And our goal in these, food inequity conversations that would be targeted towards communities who are more marginalized and generally have less a say in these types of decision makings around agriculture, was to better understand, well, how do they feel about local foods? Does it increase their sense of community or health or self-sufficiency? Some of the research that I did for CFAC, as well as Blakely Brown, and around the Double Snap Dollars program, and how people just use the program and how it made them feel, actually absolutely indicated that there were these non-nutritional benefits of using the program. So that was one project that got, one of many, many projects that were put in the back burner because of the pandemic. But I think largely I will come to the board with a climate lens and then also an equity lens.
Great, thanks so much for that. Then kind of moving on to some more nuts and bolts questions. The board currently meets the third Monday of every month from 3:30 to 5. Attendance is required. Is this a time that you can commit to this board?
Yes.
Great. Okay, then second to last question is that we encourage a board training for people who sit on boards. And would you be willing to commit to watching the 2-hour board training video and read the associated materials?
Yes.
Great. Okay.
Absolutely.
And you were right. The final question is, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I would love to learn about the vision of the board. I know that it was extremely exciting when it was established. I have a friend in Erica, who I know was a big part of its gaining ground. But I am just curious about its status now, and how does it, foresee 2022, 2023? What are its short-term and long-term goals?
Great. Well, I'm going to hand that over to Miss West, who is the resident food policy advisory board person on council, and to answer some of that. And all of us, our crystal balls all got broken, so who knows what 2022 and 2023 bring, but she'll try to answer as best she can.
And I feel like my brain is fried by this part of the day already. And I was trying to pull up the document real quick that kind of spells out all of our goals, because we do have long-term and short-term goals. There were three kind of main buckets, I'll call it, that those fall under, and one is related to land use, and then the second is like economic development of like local agriculture or local food related businesses, and that spans like a whole spectrum of where those touch points are with the local food system. And I'm completely blanking on what the third one is, but I think it's outreach and education. And part of it is recognizing the fact we already have a lot of entities in Missoula that operate in this space and not duplicating what is being done, and then being a better, maybe just educating on what is available, and finding the gaps in those existing systems. What was the rest of your question? I wrote down some notes and now I'm lost.
I mean, that was good. Those were good. That pretty much answered it. It was short-term,
Okay.
and long-term goals. But I do have another question. And this relates to some really interesting conversation, over this past couple days at the conference, and an opportunity I had to talk to a couple of folks from the Department of Agriculture from Helena. I understand that this board is, there's so much involved, right, in food and agriculture. I mean, it touches many different sectors, and I wonder if there's conversation, or is it the same wheelhouse to offer as a food policy board, like support and assistance to farmers, like for mental health, or generally health and safety?
That isn't something that's come up yet. My kids do 4-H, and I know that there's been quite a bit of discussion around mental health and farmers, like broadly across the state of Montana. But that hasn't been a specific issue that's been raised here yet. Yeah. But that's not to say it can't be or can't be included in future, strategic initiatives. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, thanks again so much for taking the time, especially it sounds like, the fact that you zoomed in from Bozeman. That's one of the pluses of the pandemic, is we've all figured out how to be very virtual and yet still connected. We have 3 interviews today. We have 1 spot on the board, so we will be making that selection, and then the clerk's office will be following up with you to let you know next steps. So again, thank you for your time and your interest and all that you bring to the community, and we look forward to being in touch.
Thank you very much, everyone. Take care.
Take care. Oh, right, folks, we have 1 more interview to do, and it looks as though our interviewee is here. If Diana, you want to promote Katie to a panelist.
She is there.
Yes, I just got promoted. I thought it kicked me out, but it was just a glitch.
There we go. All right. Yeah, it's a little glitchy. So, well, hi, Katie. My name is Stacey Anderson. I am the chair of the Public Safety and Health Committee. Thank you so much for taking the time and showing interest in serving our community on the Food Policy Advisory Board. We have a series of interview questions. Normally, if we were in person, we would just go around the desk and everyone would have an opportunity to ask you one of the questions. But we found in this virtual space, just having the chair of the committee run through the questions is the easiest way to do so. So we'll go about that now. And I just, because I know you were sent the questions ahead of time, I went ahead and I sort of actually reordered them just a smidge to kind of make for a more flowing conversation. So we are actually going to start off with, it's kind of an introductory question, but an opportunity for you to tell us a little bit more about yourself and to provide us with, do you have any prior board, and it really should say and or leadership experience that you'd like to tell us about?
Yeah. So I was really interested when I heard about this experience because I think it is a merging of a lot of my career experience and personal experience. Growing and cooking and eating food has always been really important to me. And around a decade ago, I was deciding, should I be a farmer? I'd been working for the Western Montana Growers Co-op and at farms in the Flathead Valley, or should I be a social worker? I chose to be a social worker, but maintained that interest in food justice, access to food, and also like growing and cooking food as a healing modality for individuals and families. And so my career has very much veered towards social work. I have a part-time therapy practice where I work with adolescents and families. And I also work at the University of Montana on their faculty at the School of Social Work. So I do not have any board experience, but in my roles at community mental health centers and at the University of Montana, I do have a lot of very collaborative leadership experience. Some examples of that are, I'm the assistant director of field education. So I work with a team to support every single social work student who is completing their practicum in our community, which has contributed to me having a lot of community connections amongst the social service sector. And I've also been a part of a number of different working groups to enhance access to behavioral health care services for families and children in our community.
Great, thanks so much. The second question kind of builds off of the first, and it's what skills, connections, resources, and expertise do you bring to the board? And I know you highlighted a little bit of that, but if you want to expand upon any of that in this question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like I have an understanding on the supply side of food, especially when it comes to some of our small to mid-size farmers. I think what makes Montana great, what makes our community amazing is the outdoor space, and farmers and agriculture in general plays a huge role in that. So my experiences working at farms and for the Growers Co-op contributes to me understanding some of the pressures that those small to mid-sized farmers are facing. And then my experience as a social worker, working with low income and otherwise marginalized families and individuals, I think would be a huge asset to me. Starting off, my first social work job was at the Paparella Center, and I worked there for around 6 years. And that really gave me a lot of insight into both how amazing our community is at donating food and creating networks for food to be distributed. And some of the long-term health impacts of those social determinants of health, including access to healthy and nutritious food for families. And then in my ongoing work as a therapist, I only work with families who are insured through Medicaid and Medicare right now, because that aligns with my values. And a lot of those families, when I first start working for them, they do not have a secure route to meeting their basic needs. So that's where we start. If I can get them referred to a case manager, that is what I do. If I can't, we address that in our work and make sure that those basic needs are met before we move on to the behavioral health concerns.
Great, thanks for that. That's really such an important service. Tell us about an instance where you've participated in organization or programmatic strategy development, planning, or visioning.
So when I was thinking about this interview, what came up for me and thinking about that question was when I was working for Partnership for Children as an outpatient therapist. And I was hired by a PFC, and then pretty much immediately some budget cuts happened at the state level that meant that we had to entirely reorganize the way that we provided services to children and families in order to stay afloat. The realities of different services being reimbursed at different rates meant that our model of providing intensive in-home services to families at risk of separation was no longer sustainable. So we had a real team approach. I was a therapist, not in a leadership position, but our executive director and other folks in leadership positions really brought us in for visioning all the ways that we wanted to provide services, and then weighing out like what can keep us afloat, what should we prioritize, what should we put on the back burner, which led to a shift in that eventually led to that agency receiving a large grant. That was when I was on my way out the door, but I did contribute to us deciding to go for that grant, which allowed us to offer services, very needed services to mothers who were experiencing substance use concerns during and after pregnancy, which that program's just getting off the ground, but is an amazing contribution, I think, to a problem that our community was facing and continues to face that didn't have a lot of great solutions.
Oh, that's an excellent example. Thank you for that. So being a leader on a community board sometimes entails controversy. So if you could please tell us about your approach to conflict management and having civil discussions.
Yeah, I think in every interview, there are some questions where you're like, I have got this, and others that you're like, okay, I'll come up with something. I've got this one. I am very good at de-escalation. I've pretty much built a career on developing skills to make people want to stay in relationship with me, even when we start off with them really not wanting to be in relationship with me. So I think that I have developed self-regulation skills that allow me to stay very calm and keep my active listening at the forefront when I'm engaging with someone who is of a very different opinion than me. So I have very firmly held beliefs about social justice. And when I'm engaging with someone who doesn't have those beliefs, whether that's in a family therapy session or at my Thanksgiving dinner table, I think that I do an excellent job of listening, building connection, and then identifying differences and similarities, and using that as a foundation to have meaningful conversation as opposed to meaningless conflict.
Wow, I really like that. I think maybe you should do seminars for those of us heading into the holiday season about how to manage the Thanksgiving table. All right. What do you have any ideas for do you have any innovative ideas for the board around ways such as increasing public involvement or other innovations that you'd like to bring?
Yeah, I, of course, not being fully rooted in everything that you all have done. I don't want to say that like, oh, I've got this great idea, when I think probably some conversations have been had about it. But something that I would be very passionate about would be building connections within food systems and all of the nonprofits that are providing services to individuals and families in Missoula. In my role as a professor at the University of Montana, I hear from students so often that their career goal is to do like farm-based therapy or equine therapy. And a lot of students say, I think it's so healing to get your hands in the dirt. And so I think there is a lot of momentum for those types of systems that would align like access to healthy and nutritious food and affordable food, and therapeutic services. And I think there's a lot of room for improvement, whether that would be having, I know that this is kind of in the works, but having garden boxes at Meadowlark, and having outside agencies come in and facilitate healing and non-therapeutic access to those garden boxes, expanding what Garden City Harvest is already doing in their collaboration with youth homes, really making more robust networks for people to access not just food to eat, but food as like a vital source of energy.
Sorry, had to unmute quick enough. So great. Thanks so much for that. Trying to always be on mute so that you can't hear my dog chiming in the background. So those were great ideas. Thank you for that. I think part of the fun thing about the interviews is everyone gives some ideas and we can gather them all up. Kind of some more just logistical questions next is that currently the board meets on the third Monday of the month from 3:30 to 5. And we really want to encourage and require attendance. Is this a time slot that you're able to commit to?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could absolutely build that into my monthly schedule.
Great, thanks so much. And then we really encourage board training for those folks who sit on one of our boards. And so we have a 2-hour online board training videos and some associated materials. Are you willing to commit to watching and reading those materials?
Yes, of course.
Great. Okay. And then the final question is, do you have any questions for us?
I think in my emailing back and forth with Megan, I got a lot of clarification about this role as an alternate, and that really, I think, thoroughly addressed any questions that I would have about moving forward. So I, will eagerly await hearing from you all as you weigh this decision.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Like I have said to the other 2 applicants, we have 3 total interviews and we only have 1 spot, which I'm sure all of us are very sad about right now. But we will debate and make our selection, and then the clerk's office will follow back up with you on next steps if you're chosen. But thank you for everything that you do for our community and taking the time to chat with us and for showing interest in this board.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, folks. So that completes the 3rd of our interviews. I hope you all share the feeling I have right now, is that we are so incredibly lucky in this community. I feel like every time we do these interviews of all the amazing, cool people we have in Missoula who want to give their time to volunteer for a variety of different boards. And I feel no different about this today. And I think we have a really tough decision to make ahead of us. We only have 1 position. It is the alternate on the food policy board. And okay, so when we have some hands up, so we will commence the discussion. So with Ms. Cheryl.
Thanks. And I want to hear what everyone else has to say, because I agree with you. I think that I see all 3 of these candidates as adding great value to that board. So I would be, I was sitting there thinking, I can't believe we only have 1 spot and we have these 3 candidates. And I really hope, if any of them are watching or listening, that whoever is not brought forward in this will continue to look at boards and committees of interest for the city, because I really would like to keep all 3 of them engaged. Having said that, they bring different things to the table. I'm not going to make a recommended motion yet, because I want to hear what people have to say, because I honestly don't really know what to do with this, because I like all 3 of them so much.
Well, you might have passed on your chance to make a motion. We'll see how this goes. But I agree with you. I'd love to slot them all in various places. So next I have up in the queue is Miss Savage.
Thanks. I fully agree. And I am was sort of impressed and then impressed and then impressed again. I just have a question about process. I know that when we did this last, there had been some new rules that may have gone into place. So there was a question of whether we did go ahead and nominate or whether we have a discussion and then put a motion on the floor. So I was just trying to clarify kind of how we were going to go about this. That's all. May also have just given up my position to nominate, but I just wanted to see how we were moving forward.
Oh man. Okay. Shoot, I don't remember exactly. I would love, I think, Miss Vasika seems to be signaling that she may have the answer to this.
I think I remember, I think that we would, each person would nominate a person, and then when we would vote a name instead of yes or no. And whoever got the most votes would get it.
Okay, see, I
think that's how we decided in the rules, but maybe
yes.
I'm wrong.
See, I thought it was technically per Robert's rules / Mason's rules, it should be one motion on the floor, but that motion voted up or down. But I that's more just for there's not a lot of within Mason's talking about nomination for board services. So I have next up in the queue, Miss Wet. Does anybody who has their hand raised want to put in on the thought of the procedural signal by shaking? Okay, Miss Cheryl.
To be honest, I'm not totally sure what is in the rules off the top of my head. We should have probably all reviewed a little bit of that, but I think as far as being able to go by majority, what Sandra is remembering makes sense to me as a way to bring candidates forward. And having reviewed interviewed a lot of people for conservation and energy and conservation, I think if we vote on them one at a time this way, it gets very clunky. It gets really clunky. So I like Sandra. I don't know if it's a suggestion or it's actually in the rules, but that would have made more sense given what I think I was trying to manage and how people were trying to vote on energy and climate team discussions. That's my only 2 cents.
Okay, I actually think you're right. As the chair of the committee, I am going to make an executive decision. If it's not in the rules, then we'll figure out with that. So I like Ms. Vasika's decision. So anyone can nominate whomever they want. Once we're done with discussion, if there are multiple people nominated, when we go to the vote, then you will vote. You will say the name of the person if they are nominated. Now, if we only end up with 2 of the 3 nominated, you'll say one of the 2. If all 3 get nominated, you'll say one of the 3, and then whomever has the most votes will win. That's how we're going to go with it, unless the voice from beyond, which is the city attorney, decides to play in, or Marty, will go with that for the moment. So, yes, Ms. Cheryl.
I do think, though, I'm thinking about this a bit more. I do think it'd be nice to have Jim to weigh in, because do we have to, by council rules, have a majority of those present voting for anything to move forward? I think there is a little glitch in that system potentially. So I'm wondering if Jim's out there somewhere, if he would weigh in on this, maybe.
So I guess the question would be whether or not, we have 3 nominations, and does it have to get a majority? Person have to get a majority vote? Okay.
A majority vote of those counselors that are present.
Present, exactly. Okay. Miss Vasika, she's peering down.
I just found it
in the rules.
I just found it. So the committee chair shall open nominations for a board appointment. After nominations have been received, committee members will vote by stating the candidate's name. The candidate's name with the most votes shall be recommended to the city council for appointment. Part J of rule. Part J of something on page 21
Great.
of the
Thanks
rules
so
that we
much. I
just
really
amended.
appreciate you looking that up. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to open up nominations. Anyone can nominate. They can speak to their nomination, and then when nominations are closed, we will vote how you want. And then the person with the most votes will be moved forward in the process. So with all of that figured out now, we'll move on to Ms. West.
Thank you. I'm so glad you can find those rules quickly. So I will go ahead and put a nomination on the floor then. Hold on, let me minimize so I can make sure I get names right. So I would really, I was also equally impressed with all the candidates. I think this is an amazing pool to choose from, but I am going to nominate Rebecca Elderkin, and I have a few reasons why. So I think the existing composition of the board includes currently some ranchers, educators that work with the K through 12 system, some researchers that are very focused on food policy, and especially food policy boards. There are members that have land use experience, and also direct service providers in our community that work specifically on issues of food security. And we also have some folks that are members that, while they don't currently work for the Growers Co-op, did until very recently. So I think that that's kind of the sphere of expertise that exists on the board today. And what really appealed to me with Rebecca's application is the public health and climate lens. And I think especially as we're moving into discussions around unified development ordinance that includes includes that climate lens. And as we're moving towards trying to look at all of our policies citywide through an equity and a climate lens, I think that her expertise could be very relevant to those discussions. So I'll leave it there, and we'll see how this new process works.
Thanks so much, Ms. West. Well said. I agree. And but they're great candidates. And thank you for giving us that kind of background of who's on the board. That is always a helpful discussion point. So next up in the queue, I have Ms. Becerra.
Thanks. I actually was going to ask Heidi what, in her experience with the board, what the different backgrounds were and what we're missing, what would be useful. I always think it's important for us to know that, because while we might find one of the applicants really stellar and that there would be a great contribution to the board, it would be good to know if we're duplicating the services, or sorry, I have a 5-year-old who wants to show me something. Or if we, what we need to look for in an applicant. So I guess that was my question, and it was somewhat answered. Sorry, I'm distracted by this pretty map of the world. So with that, I think I understood from Heidi that I think I got my answer through that, and I too would nominate or would support Heidi's nomination for that same reason. I think the health component was really important and relevant to me. Thanks.
Great. Thanks so much, Ms. Becerra. Mr. Nugent.
I was going to nominate Ms. Elderkin as well, because I like the health aspects. My colleagues have spoken to it much more intelligently than I could, so I'm just going to state that I agree.
Great. Thanks so much, Mr. Nugent. Mr. Contos.
Yes, I was very impressed with Katie, mostly because of her background with just helping people, her social background. I think anybody that can take on work like that has a wide understanding of people and their needs. Plus, just a sharp gal and well-spoken.
Mr. Contos, do you want to nominate Katie for consideration?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Guess that's all right. Great. Great. Thanks so much. Do we have any other council discussion on the topic? All right. Seeing none. Okay, folks. So we have two folks who've been nominated, Rebecca Elderkin and Katie Karras. I think that's how we're Karras, yes. And so Diana is going to do the vote. And when she calls on your name, you're going to say the name of the person that you would like to vote for, Rebecca or Katie. Sandra, do you have, oh, sorry. Okay. Didn't know.
I pressed the wrong button.
That's quite okay. All right, folks. So with that, we will move to a vote from Diana. Does anybody quickly, before we do that, have a question on the process? Nope. Okay, great. Thanks. Diana, if you could help us with this vote.
Starting the vote, Stacey Anderson,
I'm voting for Katie.
Myrta Becerra,
I'm voting for Rebecca.
Daniel Carlino,
I'm going to vote for Rebecca.
John Contos,
I'm voting for Katie.
Mike Nugent,
I will vote for Rebecca Elderkin.
Jennifer Savage,
I'm voting for Katie.
Amber Sherrill,
I'm voting for Rebecca.
Sandra Visica,
I'm going to vote for Rebecca.
and Heidi West.
I'm voting for Rebecca as well.
We have 6 for Rebecca Elderkin and 3 for Katie Karras and 0 for Grant Melton. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay, so with that, thank you for coming along with us on that journey. And Rebecca will be appointed to the alternate on the Food Policy Advisory Board. Per the new addition to our rules, if there was a vacancy again on the board within, I think it's a year, we can consider the other 2 applicants for filling that position as well. So the clerk's office will follow up with all of them and let them know. And thank you guys so much for your time. Apologies for the time management. I think we've gotten back on track pretty closely. And our next up, we have Public Works Committee, but no, I think I'm wrong. Ms. Cheryl is correcting me.
I think we have climate, it's a new name, Climate Conservation and Parks at 3:30, I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Yes, I'll take the word of the chair on that. Thanks so much, everybody. With that, we will. We have no public in the queue. So with that, we are adjourned for today's Public Safety and Health. Thanks again.